All right, we're gonna call to order a Board of Supervisors work session. Today is Thursday, December 4th. We're in the Supervisors hearing room on Melody Lane in Bisbee, Arizona. Order or deletion of any item on this agenda is subject to modification at the meeting, and any item listed is open for discussion. Please note that some attachments may be uploaded after the agenda is published, meaning presentation materials displayed at the board meeting may differ slightly from the attached versions. Members of the Board of Supervisors will attend either in person or by remote conferencing. Members of the public may also attend via Microsoft Teams or the mobile app. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform, or visitors, guests, to inform and discuss the agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comment will not be taken. We'll begin with roll call. District 1.
Mr. Chair, Crosby is here, and thank you. Good morning, distinguished guests.
All right. District 2.
Gomez is here.
And District 3, Ansner is here. All supervisors are present, with Mr. Crosby attending remotely. We'll begin with introductions. I'll hand it off to our guest today, who probably needs no introduction, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Ken Bennett. I'm a native Arizonan, born in Tucson, and reside in Prescott. Served on the city council back in the 80s, State Board of Education in the 90s, in the 2000s, and Secretary of State 09 to 15. I also have John Brakey with the Audit USA organization that I'm the chair of the board. Obviously, when I became Secretary of State in 2009, I began working with election officials all over the state, and it has become a passion of mine, and I enjoyed the 6 years I was secretary working with counties, bipartisan and even across the country working with election officials, and so been very concerned about how we can restore trust in elections. And have a presentation, we can probably jump right into that. But my background, I became Secretary of State in 09, and sure enough, in 2010, we had to have the first statewide recount of a statewide election. 2 million ballots cast statewide, and one of the propositions on the ballot was losing by 126 votes. First time in the history of the state. It triggered the statute at that time, which said you have to have a recount if it's 200 or less. So I had to oversee, along with the 15 county officials, the first recount of a statewide election in the history of the state of Arizona. And so that's kind of played in very much to my mindset, I guess, on elections. But I've also tried to be open-minded. How can we do elections better? And I've watched kind of the dilemma that we'll talk about when we get into the presentation. And I've come up with an idea, or our organization's come up with a way to verify elections, so that you as the election officials and the folks that certify elections can feel totally confident that the results you certify, or canvass as we call it in Arizona, are accurate.
I also want to mention that we have our esteemed county recorder here, Mr. Billy Cloud, and our elections director, Melissa Avant, for the folks that are watching online. Of course, Dylan, our county attorney, is here as well. Dylan Handel.
Yeah, Paul just showed up.
Oh, Paul's back there. Okay. Paul Cray is our chief civil deputy.
Okay.
All right. So, anyways, go ahead. You have a
Just a
question?
question for the people who are listening.
Sure.
Your organization is bipartisan, right? You have
Audit USA?
Yes. Can you just tell a little bit about what the organization is, or who makes up?
Audit USA was started about 20 plus years ago in Tucson. John Brakey and I think a fellow by the name of Jim Marsh. Yep. Back then. There were citizens in Pima County concerned about a regional transportation authority election, the RTA election, a couple $2 billion if I remember correctly. $2 billion. And there was concern about how that election was conducted, and so they began to, for lack of a better word, scrutinize how the election process had worked, and I think it turned into an 8 or 9 year thing that led to Pima County establishing an election integrity commission. It led to changes in procedures as far as how citizens were allowed to observe elections, where the wires went from computer to computer, that those were all open and disclosed, and you could see stuff instead of stuff hidden in the walls, and on and on and on. So that just kind of began an organization that was citizen-driven to kind of scrutinize elections and make sure that citizens had the level of transparency that I think they need to have confidence in their elections.
And totally bipartisan, we have Democrats and
Yes.
Republicans. Okay.
Bipartisan and also throughout the country. We've got folks from New York, Tennessee, Florida, California.
North Carolina.
North Carolina, yeah.
Okay.
And so, now I've just come onto the board within the last year, but I guess given my background, they asked me to be the chair of the board. So this is not something I started. And I'm a very, very recent addition to the board, but I'm honored to be part of a group of citizens across the state and in the country that are trying to make our elections more transparent, trackable, and publicly verified.
And that's the goal here that we're trying to do in Cochise County is just expand the transparency of the process the way we do it. I know
Yeah.
Melissa's getting an overhaul of her office right now. That's going to have the ability of more people to come in and witness and watch the tabulations and live in person, you know, and stuff. And then, you know, we want to make sure that we restore as much as possible the confidence in the elections in Cochise County. And so that's why we've asked you to come down here and give us some insight, and it's part of a bigger effort that the Board of Supervisors has, my colleagues and I, to try to improve election integrity and transparency in the county. So why don't you kick off?
And before I go any further, before I start into the presentation, I just want to say, I don't think anyone has shown more interest and courage in seeking election integrity than Cochise County. And no good deed goes unpunished, and I'm sure Mr. Crosby on the line could attest to that, but I consider what you have been trying to do for some time exactly what a lot of people in the public are looking for. They want more transparency and verifiability of their elections.
Sometimes it's the littlest issue, as Ms. Gomez can attest, that occurred in her election. The littlest issue will set off alarm bells all over the place. So she had an issue where she was left off the ballot in one precinct.
In some precincts.
Yeah.
One precinct that I knew I was gonna win.
So there's all these little things that you know may seem like minor, but it's the totality that creates the problem and the perception. So you know, Melissa and Billy, he's on the signature verification ballot, mail and return side, and that's a big, as you know, a big deal, right? And then of course the ability to have a lot of transparency in the way we process and count ballots. But getting the election ballot itself set, which was the issue.
Ballot styles and making sure that you got all of those correct is huge.
Yeah, it's every little thing. So again, this is part of an effort between us, the county recorder, and of course our elections director to improve that process. And of course, Ms. Gilman and Joe Casey, our deputy county administrator, are immensely involved in this process as well. So we're trying to build and gather information. And again, we appreciate you coming down and getting us smarter on some aspects that we may, in the future, implement here in the county to allow the public more transparency.
And you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, small things, but small things can make a huge difference.
Right.
In my introduction, I mentioned I had to oversee the first statewide recount of an election in Arizona in 2010. About 2 million voters voted in the election. One of the propositions was losing by 126 votes, triggered the state statute that says you have to have a recount of less than 200. It's now a percentage, it's a much larger number now. But back then it was the first time we had triggered a recount in the history of the state of Arizona. And I can remember when my deputy secretary, Jim Drake, who's now a Maricopa County Superior Court judge, he came into my office and said, Secretary Bennett, we're gonna have to do a recount of Prop, whatever it was, 201 or something. And it's losing by 126, and we're going to have to call every county recorder, every county election director tomorrow morning and say, we're going to have to recount 2 million ballots statewide. Now I'm an accounting major, and so I try to go to sleep that night, and it occurred to me, 2 million ballots. If the second count of 2 million ballots is 99% accurate to the first, that could be off 20,000 ballots. If it's 99.9% accurate, that's 2,000. If it's 99.99% accurate, that's 200.
And that flips it.
And instead of losing by 126, maybe it wins by 74. And so I did not sleep that night, realizing that we could be 99.99% accurate from one count to the second count, and I might be the secretary that has to stand up and say, no, that didn't lose, it really passed.
Yeah.
What? Well, over the next week or 10 days, we worked with all 15 counties to recount 2 million ballots. It changed by 42. Instead of losing by 126, it lost by 168. And we reviewed over 1,600 precincts in all 15 counties throughout the state to see how much change was there in every precinct in the state from the first count to the second count. 99.5% of the precincts had no change. Exactly the same count, first time to second time. There were some here, one change, 2. And then we hit precinct, I don't remember what number it was in Maricopa County, changed by 30. Of the 42 vote change that occurred from one statewide, 30 of it was in one precinct in Maricopa County. So I called the recorder and the election director at Maricopa County, ladies, what happened to be ladies? I said, something happened in Maple Precinct or whatever it was. Oh, well, we'll contact the election workers. And finally, after they were interviewing all the election workers, one guy finally said, I think I know what happened. At about 11 o'clock, I looked behind the machine, and somebody hadn't set the door so that the ballots, as they fed through, went down into the hopper. The ballots were behind the machine laying on the floor. And out of an abundance of caution to make sure that those ballots got counted, we picked them up off the floor and ran them through again. Well, on election day, they double counted those 30 ballots. They didn't make that same mistake a week later when they did the recount. So 30 of the 42 change in the whole state. If you excluded that 30 in that one precinct, the whole rest of the state changed by 12 votes out of 2 million. Now that's an accuracy percentage of like 99.9994%. But we were dealing with something where the results of an election could have changed with 0.001% change. So little things matter, especially in the very close elections that we're having.
Well,
these days.
in little counties, little things are big things, as it was the case with Wisconsin. So anyways, go ahead, Mr. Bennett.
Let's get started.
We have a hard stop at 11. So
Okay, then I'll get to moving here.
Yeah.
I've got to turn this baby on, and then
This is our presentation. We kind of touched on the trust crisis. You know, some people think their vote doesn't matter. It's a rigged game. I think you all have some of these. I think it was Mark Twain that once said if voting really made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it. Both sides are corrupt. And when that trust collapses, society destabilizes. In a recent poll, almost 4 out of 10 Democrats and over 7 out of 10 Republicans do not trust the results of one of the last 2 presidential elections. So 72% of Republicans, 38% of Democrats do not trust the results of one of the last 2 presidential elections. And we believe at Audit USA, the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. You just let it loose and it will defend itself. So we're
transparency, and that's how we rebuild. We want to go from a trust us, we did it right, to let us show you that we did it right. Prove it. And that's a little quote that I said somewhere sometime. Okay. Transparency, as John has told me a million times, is the currency of trust. And so, quickly, let's go back to the origination of the state. Here's how an election occurred in 1912. The ballots were read aloud in each precinct. They were recorded on a paper document. The ballots were punched with a hole, and each ballot was fed through on a string. You actually had a string, and the ballots were just hanging there. And the citizens could come in and inspect the ballots and see for themselves that the information on these ballots adds up to the summary sheet that you said, the tally. And that string was kind of the original public chain of custody. The public had total access, transparency, and responsibility for that. We have come up with a program, we call it AUDIT, it's called Auditable Ballot, what's the E for, John?
Examination.
Examination, thank you. Brain fart, sorry. So this is kind of the equivalent of the 1912 string. Auditable ballot examination, and it's named after Abe, who believed very much in Abe Lincoln and transparency. He says, I have faith in the people. They will not consent to disunion. The danger is they are misled. Let them know the truth and the country is safe. So what Abe does, it allows the county to verify by precinct that the ballot images match the CVRs. The CVR is the cast vote record. That's the tally sheets, big spreadsheet. We'll look at that here in a minute. On a separate computer, no connection to your election management system. We don't want anyone thinking that we're, getting into the EMS system and doing anything there. But what we're trying to create is the idea that the citizenry can see the results of an election in a way that they can believe it again. So here are the 5 core principles. One is to verify and publish the list of your registered voters. In Arizona, 29 days before election, we cut off. That's the domain of voters that are eligible to vote in an election. The only exception that I'm aware of is that our overseas military voters can register and vote right up until 7 o'clock on election day. But other than them, voters, we cut off 29 days before. Then you start doing mail-in ballots at 27 and on and on and on. Verify and publish the list of registered voters, including the inactive, because an inactive voter is still a registered voter. If they are inactive because their address changes hasn't caught up with them because they've moved, within the county, they're still a registered voter. Second, verify and publish the list of who voted. Now, this is already public information already. Yes, there are redactions for judges, law enforcement, people who are victims of domestic violence. There's some reasons within state law where you can have your name and address redacted.
So when you publish that record, you would put a black line over, you would show that someone voted.
There is somebody.
Name is protected.
Yeah. In Arizona, I think we have about 8,000 name and address protected voters. I don't know what your numbers are in Cochise. Any idea? Couple hundred. That's consistent. Yavapai told me that they have 300 or 400. So it's not a lot. You have about 83,500 voters right now, I think. 89 now.
Active and inactive.
Okay. Oh, if you add the inactive, you're right. Yeah. So it's not a large list, but yes, you would just simply identify that there's a couple hundred voters that we redact their names and addresses, but they're eligible, and many of them are going to vote, and so you've got 2 lists. Here's the people eligible to participate in election, and here's the people who voted. There shouldn't be anybody on the second list who wasn't on the first list.
So there's no way anybody would know who's that voted.
It's not how you voted, it's just the fact that you voted.
Because I know a lot of people think that somehow this image is going to show whose name it is attached to that ballot.
No.
Is there a number or something that everybody gets? Like I get like a 11,009, I don't even realize it, but that's my number on my ballot. Or ballot style.
There's a ballot style that's based on what city council precinct you're in, what supervisor district you're in. I'm in a fire district or a.
So the right candidates are on there.
So that the right candidates are on your ballot. Like
Nobody would know that Kathleen, that's Kathleen Gomez.
Correct, correct.
Because I think people think somehow
Well,
that's what's going to be up there.
And probably what leads to that, supervisor, is that the envelope
Yeah. I mean,
that your ballot comes in has your name, address, and some identifying information. But that's not on your ballot. So as that is returned back to the county can tell you, oh, we got Kathleen's ballot. What they're really saying is we got Kathleen's ballot envelope,
There you go, yeah.
and inside is an anonymous ballot. And
That's what would be up there.
right.
Okay, got it. I just wanted
That's how
to show
they
people to get
they
it.
can tell people, yeah, we got your ballot back. You dropped it in a box, or you mailed it, or you whatever.
Mr. Chair, and Mr. Bennett, I have a further comment along what Ms. Gomez said.
Sure.
With regard to privacy concerns in cast vote record. And it has to do with, I believe Mr. Bennett mentioned when I met him last, that there are some precincts that are so small that it can be inferred how a person voted or close to it. So I believe that your fix for that problem was to add precincts together. So, and then if your plan gets delayed in court or defeated, we're kind of back to where we are now. So how about adding precincts together to address the privacy concerns of the CVR, and what if your plan gets delayed or defeated in court?
Okay. To the first point, very small precincts. I checked your precinct within the last 20 years. You have 50, oh, wow. You have 55 precincts, 89,000 voters with your smallest precinct that I could find was San Simone at 184 or something. Do you have something smaller than that?
We have one with 0.
Have a few, depending on different precincts on the city, state, or elections, you could drill it down even further than that. And so that,
So do you have some ballot styles that are 2 of this one ballot style or 3?
there's a possibility.
Okay.
Yes.
That situation can exist and does exist in other states and counties. And our solution, Supervisor Crosby, would be for purposes of releasing this information, if you get to the point where you want to, and I think you should, release it publicly, that you combine the small precincts into at least a precinct, a kind of a temporary holding precinct size of at least 25. Colorado uses 50. They've got some counties that release ballot images in the cast vote record. So there's ways to combine some of those very small ballot styles where there's only 2 of this one. Your precinct sizes, I think, are okay. You don't have any precincts that aren't, or just 2 people. But your ballot styles on precinct splits and things like that, you get down to some very small numbers. And so we would just combine those into a
We have
minimum number that.
we have an opportunity. It's not anytime soon. Of course, we're gonna have to wait until the census, and when hopefully Ms. Gomez, myself, will be back here in 2030, and we'll be able to fix that in 2030. I don't think there's a remedy before that, unfortunately,
Okay.
because of the way the statutes are written, and I look at the way my attorneys will probably tell me the same, that I don't want to look like California and say, oh, we're just going to redraw all the lines just to redraw the lines. We're not doing that. I want to
Right.
make sure the public knows that.
Okay.
In 2030, after the census, we will have an opportunity to redraw precincts, of course, supervisory districts and other jurisdictions within the county. And that will be a time where we will put that as part of the criteria, work with both the recorder and our elections director. Hopefully our recorder's still here too. And we will make that a priority as part of the redistricting process as we redraw the lines. But for now, we're stuck with what we're stuck
Okay.
with. So
All right.
we'll have to be careful not to accidentally do something like that.
Right.
Okay,
The,
to conclude that, Mr. Chair, I understand the correction made by Ms. Avant and Mr. Bennett having to do more with ballot styles instead of precincts. So just to clarify that for anybody listening,
Right.
that appears to be what the issue will be, is ballot styles, not precincts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, who's this? Okay. So list of the registered voters, list of who voted, not how, we don't know how anybody voted. Third is just verify that the number of ballots equal the number of voters. Pretty self-explanatory, but, and let's move quickly since we have a hard ending time here. Fourth, and this is probably the most important, this is where this ABE program comes in. Verify that the ballot images match the cast vote record, the CBR. And we'll show you what a CBR looks like and how that can happen. The fifth kind of frosting on the cake thing is you could allow some random sample inspection within the county. You wouldn't do this by allowing the voters to come in and actually, but you could verify every 10th or every 20th ballot image to the actual paper ballots that you still have in your control. This is just to verify and eliminate the possibility that there was any manipulation between the ballot images from the paper ballots that they were created from. So those are the 5 points. Here's what a CBR looks like, a cast vote record. It's basically a spreadsheet. On the left are the ballots, anonymous ballots, just by the number when they came in through the system. And then the columns across the CBR are the different choices they had in the races. So you can look at ballot number 1, and this is from somewhere in Maryland, I think it is. You can see that they voted for these people in this race and these people in this race. And so what you would do, and what AID does, is it takes your ballot image file and your cast vote record, and it kind of connects them so that a person could sit down and with 2 computer screens, as you kind of see in the bottom right corner, one person is looking at the cast vote record. Abe correlated the ballot image to their corresponding row on the cast vote record. One person can look at the ballot image and verify all of the races on that ballot. Okay, in this race, did they vote for Evers and Rodriguez for governor, lieutenant governor? Yeah. Did they vote for Josh Call as attorney general? Did they vote for Follett for secretary? You can just go through. You can do it on every one. You could do it on every 10th one. You can do it however you want to just verify that the votes on the ballots are correctly recorded in the cast vote record. Of course, the cast vote record then gives you a total for each of the candidates, and you can verify that total to your system. Well, so here's a side-by-side of, on the bottom right is your election management system report showing that Cox and Schiaparelli, this is Somerset County, Maryland. We've got counties all over the country that readily provide their ballot images and cast vote records, and so we got Somerset. And you can see that in their election management system, it said Cox and Schiaparelli got 447. The ABE, which is a basically Microsoft Excel thing, gives you the same number. Those match, we're good. Total number of votes, you can see the grand total in the blue line under ABE is 815. We don't have it highlighted, but if you go a little bit higher on the EMS system, you see that the total ballots cast were 815. And what AID does, again, it's just an Excel spreadsheet with some macros that we've created with some people who know how to do this. In this slide, you can see A, you tell the system where is the file for the ballot images. B, where do you want to save the results to? C, tell it where the file for the cast vote record is. And then you tell it to work. And in 52 seconds for Somerset County, Maryland, It created 23 different precinct cast. This is one of the beauties of this. You've got vote centers, you've got ballots coming in by mail. They're all going into boxes probably. If you wanted to, try to recreate a precinct, to verify a precinct, you'd have to get in almost every box, find the ballots from all the different precincts. By correlating them digitally, you can create precinct by precinct totals or subtotals so that you can verify the numbers of voters matched by precinct and the votes for the candidates matched by precinct.
Question real quick. So in that precinct 50 where the race was left off the ballot, they resent another ballot, but it wasn't notified on the outside envelope that this was not a duplicate.
Okay.
So when you tally this up, would you be able to see, okay, well, these guys got the new ballot in, but these who voted didn't vote for that race? That would be real evidence.
Exactly.
And so then you could use that, say if I had lost or won by 50, we would say, well, you would have to redo it because those people didn't get the right ballot. Well, I don't know. Now, I know that a lot didn't get it. So that's the trust issue, because I know that the ballot wasn't received by a majority of people because they already thought they had.
And if your race had come within that margin of the number of ballots that were kind of messed up, you could have used the ballot images of both the original ballot and the supplemental ballot that was sent to the people who left it off to make sure that, okay, we had 500 that were done right, but we forgot 100, and here's the 70 of the 100 that came back in, and there's no duplicates, and
You can really get a clear picture of who voted and if they had the right ballot.
right.
Okay.
And you can look at overvotes, you can look at undervotes, write-ins, ballot marking devices. Let me get to so basically you're comparing the ballot images to the cast vote record. Abe is allowing you to audit those things together. It's balancing and comparing to your ES&S reports. And when they match, the result is verified. Let's go to this next slide. This is an actual situation in Somerset County, Maryland, where a voter, they had 19 races on, some of them were candidates running for certain offices, but they had a bunch of amendments to the Maryland Constitution. And instead of filling in the bubble, they circled the whole thing.
Oh my God.
So this voter voted for 13 of those races, but none of them would counted except that. When he circled that for the constitutional amendment, his circle line happened to go through the oval, and so it picked up some pixels of blackness in that oval. He only got credit for voting in that one. The other examples that are shown here, where he circled them, but none of his line went through the oval,
Got nothing.
got nothing.
But couldn't they have adjudicated that ballot? And
Yes, and
We do.
you do.
We do.
Yeah.
And so when somebody says, well, I don't see any marks in the ovals, well, we send it to an adjudication table. Arizona is a voter intent state. It was obvious that he was circling all of these to express his intent, and they got it right.
Mhm.
Instead of just crediting him for the one that the machine read, we picked up the other 12.
So that would be reflect, people would be able to.
People be able to see that we took care of that.
So your clarifying question, so your system, would they be able to use the adjudication ballot as well as the duplication ballot? So you could match this ballot to the duplication ballot?
Correct.
Okay.
It would separate it to exact
Right.
file that you want to look at.
Okay.
Because you use Microsoft Pivot, and you can pivot the database and pick anything you want to look at, you'll put it there.
All right. So basically, you can do a precinct level audit. You could bring citizen volunteers in, pick a precinct that they're both from, different parties, sit two people down with a computer that only has Excel on it. And you can look, one person's looking at the ballot image, the other person's looking at the votes recorded in the CVR. And You can do every one or every 10th one or whatever, and everybody knows that it was done right.
So on the occasion, when people sign their actual ballot, how do you redact that out on your scanned images?
People sign their ballot?
Yeah,
Yes.
sometimes.
It's rare, but they do.
And they write all
And then
kinds
that
of-
takes away their anonymity.
Well-
Or they could just make it in a way that you know that that person,
Mhm.
some individual mark or something.
I would leave that to the county, how you want to deal with that, but I believe the simplest way is to not do any redactions if you can avoid it. So then we have a voter education issue.
Yeah.
That if we're going to do this, yeah, maybe the first
That's
and second time.
The question for our legal team to take a look at.
Yeah. Now, it's legal in Arizona under Arizona revised.
To show your
statute,
own
to
ballot.
take a picture of your ballot and
Right.
post it on Facebook. So if voters understand that by identifying their ballot, they are identifying their ballot, then they're either, if they're okay with that, keep doing so, but if you're not, don't sign your ballot. But you might have a cycle or two where you have some volunteers quickly scan the ballot images and say, oh, yeah, here's Grandma Bennett signed her ballot.
If in a case like that, if somebody came in and signed their ballot and we got it on the early board, could the early board just redact the name, duplicate it in
I
the
think so.
system? So then it
Yes.
wouldn't show redaction, it
Correct.
would show ballot 1, ballot 2.
Correct. Again, we're not connecting anything to the servers on which the EMS system, election management system is, because don't want any questions of contamination one direction
Right.
or the other. So the final vision is that got to stay on, got to be able to verify ballots or we're going to end up with bullets.
Yeah.
And I'll finish with this, when one side sees elections as fair and the other side sees them as rigged, and that's usually based on who won or who lost, we're no longer sharing a democratic republic. We're fighting over a broken scoreboard. And until we restore trust, which I think we can, and I think Cochise County would be a fabulous starting point in Arizona to begin a level of transparency, trackability, and public verifiability. Now, in one of the meetings that we had individually, the question came, well, what does the Secretary of State's office think about this? Well, I called the Secretary of State as a former one myself, and this was his exact quote. I described what I'd be presenting to you, and he says, you can tell them that you and I, Ken and Adrian Font, we're both apostles for radical transparency.
And he sees this as radical.
No, he's willing to support radical transparency. This
Yeah.
is radical, maybe compared to some.
Yeah.
I think in a few years, this is going to be the standard. There are counties in the country, Beta County in Idaho, that includes Boise, the largest populated county in Idaho, Tarrant County in Texas, Somerset, Dane County in Wisconsin. The fourth largest election jurisdiction in the country, Miami-Dade County, just announced that they are going to quit destroying ballot images and they're going to release ballot images and the cast vote records.
So does this help with timing as far as getting that information out? It would, right? So that,
Well, what we want to offer, Supervisor, is something that your election officials can use as a tool internally
okay.
so that they can be more confident that these procedures were checked and double checked and triple checked or whatever, that folks were allowed to come in, observers can look right over our shoulder, or maybe we want to help you prevent what happened in, with all due respect, Pinal County a couple of years ago. When the state attorney general race had to be recounted and all the counties recounted, unfortunately, Pinal County came up with a 500 vote difference between the first count and the second count. And in a race where the margin of victory was only about 400, I think, 300 or 400, the Pinal County results changed by 130 or, I mean, it was some significant number. If every county had made the mistake that Pinal County had made, that race could have flipped statewide, and we'd be looking at Attorney General, who was Amadei?
Yeah, Abe, yeah.
Instead of Chris Mays.
So,
And so we want to give you something that's not a catch you
right.
by, we're going to give it to the public before you've used it, however much you want to use it. We want to give it to you, and the word give. Well, we're a nonprofit organization. We're not trying to make money off this. There are some companies in the country that have similar, maybe better systems that, for example, Ada County in Idaho, Tarrant County use a system called Survey or something, where they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a system that releases the ballot images and the cast vote record on their public website, and anybody can look at it. And that, I think that's great. But what we're talking about for Cochise is giving you a tool that you can use on a separate computer. It's not part of your EMS system, and you can make sure that the results you release on a timely basis, I think it can help speed up that time, Mr. Chairman, but not probably significantly. I don't think it's going to, I mean, it might help you find an error. If you're looking for a ballot, which box do I look in? No, let's just go to the ABE system, and there it is right there, and yeah, it matches.
Well, this last election that I was in, we had machines that weren't working properly. We had to have it, replaced. There were 16,000 ballots that were retabulated that we didn't know about. So for me, it was like, did everything get counted? Did it get, I was unsure, right? And I had made the statement that if I was a supervisor and had to verify, I would have real issues with it because of all the things that happened in that process. This would be able to make me feel comfortable because I'd be able to see and it would match, because we don't have anything like that. So we just have to take it on the process is working, which for that 2-week period almost didn't work.
Well, like my earlier slide, trust us, it's right.
Right.
Well, no, let's
So
look at it. Let's
your
all look
point-
at it together. Let's look at it internally first.
Yeah.
Make sure we've made as few mistakes as possible. We're not going to eliminate mistakes from elections because humans are involved in
Right.
elections and humans make mistakes. But we can identify those mistakes, reduce them to the fewest number possible, and when we do give you a product to vote on in the board meeting to certify, you feel as comfortable about it as you possibly can.
The other thing your point is making, you're going to make available these computers, we could make available for a citizen to come in and say, I want to double check.
Precinct 32.
Yeah, so they can come into Melissa's office and there'll be 2 computers there. They can look at this screen and see the ballot image. They can look at this screen and see the cast votes record. So if there's a concern, the citizens could actually go do their own audit. And if they see something wrong, they can bring it to the elections director who can double check it, or they can bring it to the board and we could take another look at it or whatever.
And there's probably an explanation.
Right. Well, that's what I'm
There might
saying.
be a difference. Oh,
Well,
you were looking at the ballot image of the one that got replaced because we sent out a new one that had
Right.
precinct on it.
Right.
But I'm saying it's a mechanism, because what occurred, as you mentioned, in the last 2 elections, that created this problem where people perceive there to be an issue. You can alleviate that concern by allowing them the opportunity to come in and check.
Yeah.
The public can come in and they can look at these ballot images. They could look at the cast vote record. They could verify that is the tally based on the actual ballot itself.
Mhm.
So if there's a question, people can come in and look at it. So that helps. And say, if somebody comes in and says, hey, we think you cheated on this precinct or this vote for this office was wrong, we say, okay, yeah, maybe you should go over to the elections department and you'll have the access to the ballot image, you'll have the access, and why don't you conduct a citizen's audit?
Right.
A citizen's audit, and then if you see something different, then bring it to the election director's attention and she will have her team review what you saw and either say, yes, there's an issue here, and then she'll figure out how to remedy that, or she'll say, no, this is what you're looking at, and this is why this is the way, and give you a rational explanation for that,
Right.
and try to alleviate that concern.
The other thing it does, so if you have it completely like your recorder and your election director are Republicans, and so the other party says, well, it's going to go because they're all Republican, so of course it's going to go the Republican way. They could come in and make sure that that didn't happen.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, both
Mr.
parties
Chair,
could
I have
audit-
some
an
comments,
audit team.
Crosby.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Mr. Crosby.
Okay, yeah, it looks like we do have a little bit of time, and I appreciate that. So I wanted to point out that the foundational issue in state law, in case this plan gets delayed in court or defeated in court and we're back to where we are now, just in case that happens, to get back into the 16442B of the ARS, that is obviously state law, and it is promulgated federal law into state law. And so the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, is the foundation of the issue. And so, like I said, in case this plan gets delayed or squashed in court and we're back to where we start, then we need to keep in mind things like revocation is not the same as expiration of VSTL accreditations and so on. And so we need to keep that in mind as the foundational issue. And so we don't want to be putting a Band-Aid on cancer, okay? And so I hope that Mr. Bennett's plan cures all the ills, but in case it does not, and we're back to where we are now, then we need to be taking a serious look at 16442B, state law. And there's did I say revocation is not the same as expiration? And so quorum provisions having to do with the Election Assistance Commission do not relate to non-compliance with timelines, and expires means expires. I guess that concludes my comments. Thank you very much. And by the way, I believe that Ms. Lowenheim is going to post another one of my document dumps for everybody's benefit, and I hope that my colleagues will take a look at that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
If I could address his concerns, I think 16442B refers to part of the process that happens at the statewide level for the verification and certification of machines,
Right.
which have been done at the supposed to have been done at the federal level first. Lots of issues and questions about whether that process really adds value to the whole thing. Volkswagen proved 10 years ago that you can program the exhaust system of a car to work just right and fine when it's in test mode sitting in the vehicle testing bay. But then when you drive it out and go into regular mode, it's polluting 10 times more than it really is. So this helps to address a myriad. It doesn't solve all the issues. This has nothing to do with equipment verification and certification. But transparency even helps address that. Because if you can show people that, yes, you might have questions about whether the federal and or state certification of equipment, election equipment machines is as good as it could be or not, but here's the ballot images and the cast vote record and they match.
Yeah, that's excellent, and I hope that my colleagues will agree that we need to recruit other counties into this plan.
Yep.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Somebody's got to be first.
Why not you?
Yeah. So, okay. Well, we got like 10 minutes. I don't know if anybody wants to wrap up anything with Mr. Bennett, or you want to add anything, sir?
Have you got any kind of, so Fontes supports this. He thinks it's a good thing. Have you had any feedback from the other parties in the state, like the Libertarians or whoever?
We haven't presented this to the parties yet. We thought it was most important and appropriate to present it to counties and election officials that really run elections.
Yeah, exactly.
I think kind of back to that first slide of, more than 70% of Republicans and almost 40% of Democrats don't trust one of the last two, and you know which ones they are.
Yeah.
The Republicans love the results of the 2024 election because their person won.
Right.
They went bananas in 2020 when Trump lost. I guess one thing, let's take that 2020 election where some of this kind of really got started. And this is where I got to know Mr. Brakey so well. We were asked to be kind of the liaisons for the Senate at the Maricopa County audit. But let's go back to the statewide election of 2020. Biden, the results said, won by a little over 10,000 votes out of 3.4 million. Now you get into those numbers and people they have a hard time understanding. Bring it down to some numbers that they can understand. If Arizona was 1,000 voters, I called it my shire talk back then because that's what a shire is. Back in England, old England, 1,000 people lived in a community, they called it a shire, Devonshire, Yorkshire. That's what a shire was 1,000. So what's the Arizona Shire story? In 2020, if Arizona was 1,000 voters, the actual voter turnout was 80%. So 800 of those 1,000 voters in Arizona voted. You want to know how close the election was? Biden got 401, Trump got 399. 2 votes out of 800. Now, think if you were the governing board of a homeowners association, and there was some contentious something that had to be decided, and you had 1,000 homeowners in your homeowners association. What would you do? Well, you'd have an election. The first thing you do is you'd make sure that we have an agreed-on list on who's the 1,000 people that get to vote in this election. That was our step number 1. Publish the list of who's registered voters. Second thing you would do is you would record those people on some type of a sign-in sheet when they came in to vote. And there's 800. 800 of the 1,000 voted. Then you would make sure, third thing you do is you'd make sure that you have 800 ballots to go with the 800 people who voted. And then if it was as close as 401 to 399, or one mistake might have meant, no, it tied, or 2, it really went the other way, what would you do? You would come up with some system to let people say, here's the tally sheet of when we recorded the votes, and here's the ballots, and let's look at them. Let's count them 2 or 3 more times. Let's do whatever you got to do to convince the 1,000 people that it was really 401 to 399. And that's what we're offering you, a tool to do.
Again, I appreciate you coming down. This is good stuff, and as we move the ball forward on transparency, I hope people understand is there's nothing here that isn't technically already public information. Right?
Yeah.
So this is stuff that if somebody does a public records request or somebody wants to, they're able to have access to this data. And so making it or publishing it or providing it online is not a big step, and it allows private citizens, should they desire, to verify outcomes. They can do their own little citizen evaluation, citizen audit, and if they think there's a genuine concern, again, they can bring it to the attention of the elections department and eventually the board, and then we could go from there. And we've seen that here in meetings where 3 of us are sitting up there on the board, and a citizen comes up and brings up a point that we didn't even think of, and it happens. We are human, and we can't remember everything. I don't have a lock trap memory, and sometimes I miss stuff, and sometimes, it's nice to have a member of the public come and say, hey, Mr. Chair, or hey, board member Gomez, you have to look at this, or mention that, and then we go back and we take a look at it. So it's another tool, and I think it's a valuable transparency tool to allow the public to allow that check and balance, which
And
is what the
timely,
system.
Right, it's timely, so it's not like they have to wait a long period, and so then that gives a level of, well, what are they doing? It's just instantaneously.
The one thing we haven't talked about is cost.
Okay.
You'll probably have to buy about a $2,000 computer, keep it separate from your EMS system. You're going to need, 68 gigabytes of RAM? And
Yes, that's what you want, 64 RAM for your size.
That's nothing. Yeah.
That's it.
Well,
i7
you've got about,
processor.
how many voted in the last presidential election? 60,000-ish? Yeah. Abe could take your ballot image file of 60,000 ballot images and your cast vote record and correlate it probably in about 8 or 9 minutes.
And it would create all the precincts, 55, and
And
probably
you would suddenly
15
have
minutes.
everything in a precinct
in hyperlink.
subtotal. Whereas now, if you wanted to try to create a precinct that somebody could come in and do a citizen audit on, you got to get into, take forever, ever.
So again, this is something that we could do for the 2026 election on a trial, as a trial. We won't have any official force of law or anything like that. It's just to run a test to see and try this out and experiment with it. And we'll take a look at what it would take. Of course, we'll get with our county administrator and our elections director on how that process would occur. But I mean, it's something to take a serious look at, and then we, let people know we're gonna give it a trial run.
Mhm.
And then after 2030, if we're still here, we could look at redrawing the lines to make sure we don't accidentally expose inadvertently someone's vote and whatnot, and making sure that's a secure part. And then we could implement it on a full county-wide basis. So initially, we might have to be careful, and again, that's what we'll get with Melissa, and we'll see how we allow that correlation to occur so that we're not exposing someone's vote.
Yeah, I could see your precinct sizes on your website. I couldn't get into ballot style.
We may, initially what I'm getting at is we may just take a certain number and say, okay, we're going to do a trial run with a certain number. That number is so large that we can make sure that it's not going to allow someone to ascertain someone's vote.
Yeah.
And then as we fix the issue with the precincts, then we can implement it fully.
Absolutely.
And then so basically for the 2032 election, it'd be fully implemented.
Mr. Chair, I have further comment.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm looking at this article that came out about Mr. Senator Kavanaugh's recent bill, and it has a quote from Callie Jones, who is Mr. Foltes' public information officer, and she's talking about scoping conspiracy theories about our elections, and elected officials going to spread disinformation about election results, they should face legal consequences, and so on. And
So she's going to punish free speech. Yeah.
Okay, so this is our current Secretary of State's still viewpoint is that I guess he does not think that it's his responsibility to make sure that the state of Arizona complies with 16442B. So I wonder, Mr. Bennett, as the former Secretary of State, is it the state Secretary of State's responsibility to make sure that as critical infrastructure, the state Secretary of State confirms everything claimed by the EHC?
Yes.
Or do we just believe whatever they say?
My answer is that it's the responsibility of the Secretary of State of this state to confirm that, not just assume, or explain it off with some of the stuff you're reading. I spoke with the Secretary directly about what I was going to be talking to Cochise County about today. And
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I appreciate those comments.
and I read you his verbatim quote. Tell them we are both apostles for radical transparency.
Yeah, and again, this is just making information available to the public.
It's just transparency.
This is not deciding one way or the other, or pushing one agenda or one conspiracy. This is just like, here it is, here's the data, it's available, you can compare it, you could look at it, and that's basically what we're on.
And as you said, there's other places that do this already.
Right.
Okay, well, we still have this conflict with the Secretary of State, according to Callie Jones' press aide. She said tabulation machines are certified as required under both state and federal law. Well, prove it.
All right.
I've seen anybody prove
All right,
it.
we gotta cut it short here. Well, we're not cutting it short, we're out of time. And again, I want to thank Secretary Bennett, Mr. Bennett, for coming in.
My pleasure.
And Mr. Brady
I'm
as well.
honored to
Swinging
have
by.
your time
And so we will start talking about it, and then we could, I guess we could vote on this. Or
Yeah, we got work to do
Yeah.
with our team here to put this into some kind of process. We have to write this process up, and then we'll be getting back with you guys as well to start how to.
Come down and share it with your
Sure.
election folks, and they could see how it works. We could run some trial runs behind the scenes on last month's election or whatever you got.
So we got a meeting with a lawyer, and they're charged by the minute.
Oh.
So let me end it there. Our next meeting is now. We are going to do a possible executive session to discuss legal counsel regarding a notice of claim by Mr. Crosby. So that's going to be.
Crosby is leaving at this.
All right. All right, so we're going to go do that. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to talk
Thank you.
about.